are not in a scenario in which we can claim that the entirety of the halachic and Haggadic material is supportive, and yet there are gems of beauty that we need to fish out, and we need as a community to begin to manage how is it that we shape our communities more in light with some of these values and make sense of the problematics when we discover them. And lastly, I wish I could say that our Orthodox community has done a great job. In fact, I wish I could say religious communities have done a great job. You may know that in 1990, Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And that granted equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities. But in a rare move of unity, all major religions banded together in a motion to be exempt from ADA. In other words, according to Dr. Jeremy Lithman of the OU's Yachad, one would think that shuls would be the first to take on such an obligation to become accessible, and it has not been the case. Despite that, right, in 1990, there were only a handful of shuls wheelchair accessible, and today there are 70. So what I'd like to do is articulate, in a certain sense, a kind of imagination that we have the capacity to move forward in this, and that disability doesn't need, of any kind, exclusion doesn't need to be the modus vivendi of the Orthodox community or the traditional Jewish community, and that there are halachic categories that we need to address fully. But I wanted, before we even get to the halachic categories, I think we often, as traditional Jews, forget that there are meta-halachic categories that often determine the psak halacha in advance of the halachic discourse. In 1951, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik was asked if it was permitted to volunteer to serve as a chaplain in the U.S. Army. Now, his response to this question was remarkable because he admits that he is not addressing it fully objectively. Quote, "I've undertaken the research into the halachic phase of the problem, which, fraught with great political and social implications on the highest level of public relations, and with utmost care and seriousness, but I cannot lay claim to objectivity if the latter should then signify the absence of axiological premises and a completely emotionally detached attitude. Halachic inquiry, like any other cognitive theoretical performance, does not start out from the point of absolute zero as to the sentimental attitudes and value judgments. There always exists in the mind of the researcher a question that stands out more clearly, and while it's true that intellectual endeavor in the social sciences is greater, even in the sciences, it is possible to understand how a subjective mood is present. From the very outset, I was prejudiced in favor of the project of the Rabbinical Council of America. I could not imagine any halachic authority rendering a decision against it. My inquiry consisted only in translating a vague, intuitive feeling into fixed terms of halachic discursive thinking. In short, all poskim operate like this. They think first with their gut, and then they look at the sources second. Rav Nachman Rabinovich recently stated that a posek who is not guided by broad ethical considerations in his psak, quote, the psak is not worth the paper it is written on. So I propose that we need poskim, religious leaders, community leaders, who actually embody a commitment to the values that are meta-halachic and refuse to start doing the halachic research as if it was objective, as if it was merely a kind of manipulation of rules, and instead imagine that there is no such thing as psak that doesn't have an imagination of a particular kind of community, a particular kind of character, a particular kind of social relationship, a particular kind of embrace, and a particular kind of compassion. And therefore, given that, halachic considerations are indeed important, but they need to come with clarity about what indeed we as a community all need. And so, I want to begin then with the challenge of diversity and inclusion. And I want to claim that if we can start with Franz Rosenzweig's kind of as an introduction, he, in the beginning of the Star of Redemption, writes about creation, revelation, and redemption. So I want to talk a little bit about creation and revelation, and hopefully, when we follow up with our conversation today, we'll all bring the redemption. So here's the creation, I think, text that articulates the profundity of our responsibility to human diversity. It's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin that Rabbi Soloveitchik used to quote, and Greenberg has as a central feature of his theology. Mishnah Sanhedrin 4:5. This Mishnah comes into play because when a person is testifying in court for a monetary case, okay, it's a little money here, a little money there. But what when you ask to testify in a case where someone could be put to death, a capital crime? So they came up with the notion, the rabbis, that they had to warn, in fact terrify, witnesses who had seen a murder before they gave their testimony. And this is how they terrify the witnesses. How do they frighten? How do they put fear of God in capital cases? So they brought them in and warned them, know that they're different. You can repay money if you get it wrong. But if you get it wrong here, someone dies. And then they say, and this is the reason that God made Adam alone in the world. Why is Adam created first? A single being. As opposed to by creating a whole cadre of human beings all at once. This is to teach you that anyone who destroys, this is very famous, right? A single soul, it's as if they've destroyed a whole world. And anyone who saves a single soul, it's as if they saved the whole world. Greenberg suggests that this means that every human being is of infinite value. And that on some level, every human being's needs, then, if a human being gets sick with a disease that needs to be cured, there would be simply no monetary limit to what we ought ideally expend. Because every human being is worth an entire universe of human beings, right? Despite the fact that, of course, we know that how much are we willing to spend to save one person's life? Well, it depends on where you live, right? If you live in Africa, even 25 cents for an oil rehydration kit might be too much, right? So in other words, what Yitz is saying and what this Mishnah is suggesting is that were we to be honest about our duty, every human being is worth jillions of dollars. That's A. B. We teach that Adam was created alone in order to say that no one can say my father was greater than yours. We're all equal to each other. Just because I come from this parentage, you come from that, we're all from the same parentage. And therefore, no one can claim anyone's better than anybody. So therefore, we're all equal. The implication of this is that there is no hierarchy justified by race or religion or nationality or wealth or capacity. We are all equal in the eyes of God and of infinite value. And lastly, this is perhaps even the most potent. And then, why does God create Adam alone? To speak of the praises of the Holy One. Because when people make a coin, that's Adam, the original coin from which all were made, that stamp makes all the coins identical. But when God makes the original coin, Adam, everyone comes out utterly and profoundly unique. Every human being is an endangered species that exists now and will never exist again. And therefore, the loss of any single human being is of calamitous import. Because there never will be that person again. There's, by the way, this appears halachically, that if I want to count people, by the way, this week's Parsha, how do you count people? What do? They have to give a chatzit shekel, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're not allowed to count people. You can count money, okay, that's good. You can count money, you can't count people.
Men.
Right? Huh?
Men.
Correct. Good.
Sorry. That's a joke for
You can go that
representative.
direction, but hopefully we'll get there
Over
too.
20.
No doubt.
Over 20.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. No, but
Touche.
but the key here is, of course, is that
Just saying.
No, that's why we're here too. Or the other thing, right? When I count Jews for a minyan, men again, one, we're not allowed to go 1, 2, 3.
Not one, not two.
Why do I do that?
What's the passage? There's a passage.
Hoshiyata mechavach techo reven aseva dilemma has 11 words, 10 words, but people say it. But why? Because there's no aggregation of human beings. To count human beings is to go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Do you understand? There is no 2. Because there's nothing fungible about them. You can count coins because they're all the same.